Let me ask you a question, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Do you ever look at that little pill you take every morning for your blood pressure and feel a sense of, a sense of frustration? You're grateful for it, of course. You know it's protecting you. But there's this nagging feeling, this quiet question in the back of your mind that asks, am I going to be on this for the rest of my life? Maybe you're tired of the mild but persistent side effects, that little bit of fatigue that steals the energy from your afternoons, or the occasional dizziness when you stand up too fast. You've been diligent. You've followed the rules for years, but you've also been making changes. You're walking more, you're watching your salt, and you're wondering if all that hard work could ever be enough to earn you a little bit of freedom from that daily pill. If any of that sounds familiar, you are in exactly the right place today. Because while you might feel like you're on a one-way street with medication, there's a conversation happening in medicine right now about a carefully managed, doctor-supervised process for potentially reducing or even stopping these drugs. But, and this is the most important word I will say all day, but there is a life-threatening danger we have to address first. A shocking number of people, with the best intentions, make a critical mistake. They see their blood pressure numbers looking good, they feel fine, and they think, I can just stop taking this. This can trigger a phenomenon known as rebound hypertension, where your blood pressure can spike, sometimes even higher than it was before you started treatment, dramatically increasing your short-term risk of a heart attack or a stroke. This is not a scare tactic. It's a physiological reality. And if you've ever told yourself, this medication is just part of getting older, I'm here today to respectfully challenge that idea and to give you a safe, responsible roadmap for exploring a different path, with your doctor as your trusted co-pilot. Today, we are going on a deep dive into a topic that is profoundly important but often misunderstood. We're going to talk about the Deprescribing plan. This isn't about a miracle cure or a quick fix. This is about a thoughtful, scientific, and collaborative partnership with your physician to see if you can safely lower your reliance on blood pressure medication, improve your quality of life, and take back a measure of control over your health journey. We're going to give you the information you need to have an intelligent, empowered conversation with your doctor. Think of this video as the briefing you wish you had time to get during a busy doctor's appointment. Throughout our discussion, we'll be referencing the work and guidance of world-class institutions like the Mayo Clinic, the American Heart Association, and insights from major clinical studies published in the National Library of Medicine, so you know you're getting information grounded in real science. Here's the journey we're going on together today. First, we will confront the biggest danger head-on, the myth of stopping cold turkey and the reality of rebound hypertension. Then, we'll clearly define what this term deprescribing actually means in a medical context. It's likely not what you think. After that, we'll walk through a 4-point checklist to help you determine if you might be a good candidate to even consider this path. And you'll definitely want to stick around for the next part, where we'll look at the real-world odds of success based on major scientific reviews to make sure our expectations are firmly grounded in reality. From there, we'll build the absolute non-negotiable foundation, the powerful lifestyle changes that have to be in place for any of this to work. Then, we'll pull back the curtain on what a safe tapering plan actually looks like, how your doctor would structure it, and the critical role you play in monitoring your progress. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we're going to give you a mini script, actual words and questions you can use to start this conversation with your doctor, so you can walk into your next appointment feeling confident, not fearful. My goal today is to replace your anxiety and uncertainty with knowledge and a clear, safe plan of action. So let's begin with the most critical safety warning, the one that frames this entire conversation. Let's talk about the dangerous myth of stopping your medication cold turkey. It's so easy to fall into this trap, and it comes from a place of good intention. Let's imagine a man we'll call Carl. He's been on his medication for 8 years. For the last 2 years, every time he checks his blood pressure, it's perfect. 125/75. He feels great. He's lost 10 pounds. He starts to think, this pill, is it really doing anything anymore? My body has healed itself. I'm fine now. So one day, he just decides not to refill his prescription. For a day or two, he feels fine. Maybe even better, a little more energy. He thinks, I knew it, I didn't need it. But then, on day 3 or 4, he starts getting a pounding headache. He feels flushed, anxious. His heart is racing. What Carl is likely experiencing is that terrifying phenomenon we mentioned, rebound hypertension. The science behind this is fascinating and crucial to understand. Think of your body as a system that always seeks balance. When you start taking a blood pressure medication, especially certain types like beta blockers, such as metoprolol, or centrally acting agents like clonidine, your body doesn't just sit back and relax. It adapts. It gets used to the medication pushing your blood pressure down. In response, your body may increase its own internal mechanisms that raise blood pressure, trying to counteract the drug and get back to its previous, albeit high, state of balance. It's like you're pushing a door closed and your body is on the other side, pushing back with equal force. Now, imagine you suddenly remove your hands from that door. The force from the other side, which your body has built up over months or years, has nothing pushing against it. The door flies open with tremendous force. That's rebound hypertension. Your blood pressure doesn't just go back to where it was. It can violently overshoot that mark, creating a short-term acute crisis that can put immense strain on your heart and your blood vessels, precisely the event the medication was meant to prevent. I remember a story a cardiologist shared about a patient, a gentleman in his late 60s who went on a European vacation. He miscalculated his pills and ran out a week early. He figured, I'll be home in a few days. What's the harm? He spent the last 2 days of his dream vacation in a hospital in Rome with a hypertensive emergency. The red flag here is any thought in your mind that says, I feel good, so I can stop. That feeling is the medication working. It's a sign of success, not a sign of being cured. The only safe action step, if that thought crosses your mind, is to write it down as a question to ask your doctor at your next appointment. That's it. That's the only move. Never, ever experiment on your own. So, if stopping on your own is off the table, does that mean you're locked in for life? Not necessarily. And that brings us to the real subject of our conversation today. What is this thing called deprescribing? When you first hear the word, it might sound like some trendy detox plan you'd read about on a wellness blog. It sounds like you're just taking away prescriptions. But in the world of evidence-based medicine, it is a much more sophisticated and thoughtful concept. Deprescribing is the planned and supervised process of dose reduction or stopping of medication that might be causing harm or might no longer be of benefit. The key words there are planned and supervised. This isn't a patient's DIY project. It's a formal clinical strategy, a collaboration between you and your healthcare provider. The goal isn't just to get you off a pill. The true goal is to optimize your entire treatment plan. Think of it this way. When you were first diagnosed with high blood pressure, maybe years ago, your doctor's primary goal was to get that number down to protect you from a future heart attack or stroke. and that was the right goal. But now, years later, the goal might evolve. The new, more nuanced goal could be, what is the minimum effective dose of medication required to keep you safe, while also giving you the maximum possible quality of life? Maybe you're on 2 or 3 different drugs and you're dealing with a cocktail of side effects. Perhaps deprescribing for you doesn't mean stopping everything, but simply eliminating one of those drugs to reduce fatigue or dizziness. For another person who has made dramatic lifestyle changes, it might mean trying to cut their one low-dose pill in half. The point is, it's a personalized process. A good friend of my family, a wonderful woman named Sharon, was on 3 different medications and felt perpetually exhausted. She described it as living life through a fuzzy screen. Her deprescribing journey with her cardiologist took a full year. They didn't stop everything. They just carefully eliminated one of her 3 medications, the one most likely causing her fatigue. Her blood pressure remained perfectly controlled on the other 2, but she said it was like someone turned the lights back on in her life. That's the power of this concept. The action step here is to shift your mindset. Instead of thinking, how do I get off this med? Start thinking, how can my doctor and I work together to find my ideal treatment plan for this stage of my life? The red flag to watch for is anyone, online or in person, who talks about getting off blood pressure meds without emphasizing that this is a slow, methodical process that must be led by a physician. Now that we understand deprescribing is a real, supervised medical strategy, the next logical question is it for you? Who is a good candidate to even begin this conversation with their doctor? It's not for everyone, and it's crucial to be realistic. Based on clinical consensus and guidelines from organizations like Health Central, we can put together a general 4-point checklist. Think of these as the green lights that might suggest you're a good person to explore a deprescribing trial. The first point on the checklist is a history of a long-term, stable blood pressure control. This doesn't mean your blood pressure was good last week. This means that for an extended period, ideally a year or more, your readings have been consistently in the target range on your current medication dose. Your doctor needs to see a stable, predictable pattern. If your blood pressure is still bouncing around, or if your dosage was just adjusted 3 months ago, now is not the time. You need to demonstrate stability first. The second point is that you are ideally on a lower dose, simpler medication regimen. If you're only taking one low-dose medication, attempting to taper off is a much more straightforward process than if you are on 3 or 4 different high-dose drugs, all working in different ways. For those with more complex multi-drug regimens, the process is far more delicate, and the likelihood of success is lower. It's not impossible, but it's a much bigger mountain to climb. The third and perhaps most important point on this checklist is your level of motivation and commitment to a foundation of lifestyle changes. This is the big one. Your doctor needs to see that you are not just hoping for an easy way out, but that you are an active, engaged partner in your own health. Are you consistently exercising? Have you truly overhauled your diet to be low in sodium? Are you managing your weight and stress? If you can walk into your doctor's office with a log of your daily walks and your healthy home blood pressure readings, you are presenting yourself as a serious, reliable partner. And the fourth point is the absence of what doctors call end organ damage. This means that your high blood pressure has not already caused significant, irreversible damage to other parts of your body, such as your kidneys, your heart, or your eyes. If you have conditions like chronic kidney disease or have already had a heart attack, the equation changes dramatically. In those cases, the protective benefit of the medication is so high that the threshold to even consider stopping it becomes much, much higher. The risk of something going wrong is simply too great. So the action step here is to honestly review these 4 points. Do you have stable BP, a simple regimen, a rock-solid lifestyle foundation, and no related organ damage? If you can tentatively check yes to these, you have a solid basis for a conversation. The red flag is ignoring any of these. If you have volatile blood pressure but are really motivated, you're still not ready. If you have perfect blood pressure but haven't changed your diet, you're not ready. All the pieces need to be in place. This isn't about passing a test. It's about ensuring your absolute safety. So let's say you've gone through that checklist and you're thinking, hey, that sounds a lot like me. I'm a great candidate. That's a wonderful and empowering feeling. But before we get carried away on a wave of optimism, it's absolutely crucial that we ground ourselves in reality and talk about the real-world odds of success. Because if we don't manage our expectations, we're setting ourselves up for a feeling of failure, which is the last thing we want. A promise of a guaranteed cure would be clickbait, and that's not what we're about. We are about the truth, and the truth is, successfully getting off and staying off blood pressure medication is challenging. A major systematic review, that's a study that gathers and analyzes the data from multiple previous studies, looked at this very question. What it found, as published by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, was that after about 2 years, only around 26% of patients who attempted to stop their medication under medical supervision were able to remain off it long-term. Let me say that again. About 1 in 4 people succeeded in the long run. Now, at first, that number might sound discouraging. You might think, only 25%? Why even bother? But I want to invite you to look at it from a different perspective. First, it proves that it is possible. For a quarter of the people who tried, it worked. That's not zero. That is a significant number of people who successfully reclaimed a life without that daily pill. Second, it highlights just how powerful and persistent the underlying causes of high blood pressure can be. It's a testament to the fact that for many, medication isn't a crutch. It's a necessary tool to manage a chronic condition. For the other 75% of people in those studies, the attempt wasn't a failure. It was simply a test. They tested the hypothesis, do I still need this medication? And the answer for them was yes. That is not a failure. That is gaining valuable information about your own body in a safe, controlled way. Maybe they learned they could get by on a lower dose, which is still a huge win for their quality of life. The story here is one of my own relatives, a man who was determined to get off his lisinopril. He did everything right, lost 30 pounds, walked 5 miles a day, ate a pristine diet. He and his doctor tapered him off the medication, and for 6 wonderful months, he was free. But slowly, despite his incredible efforts, his pressure began to creep back up. He had to go back on a low dose. Was he disappointed? Yes, a little. But he told me, you know, I'm not even mad. I proved to myself I could do everything possible. And I learned that for my body, with my genetics, this little pill is a helper I need. And now, I take it with gratitude, not resentment. That is the mindset of a true winner. The action step here is to define success on your own terms. Success isn't just zero medication. Success is finding your optimal path. It's ending the fight with your medication and making peace with the path that keeps you safest and feeling your best. The red flag is a all-or-nothing mentality. If you believe that anything short of complete cessation is a failure, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. All right, let's just take a quick pause. We are a little over halfway through our deep dive, and we've covered some incredibly important ground. We've debunked the dangerous myth of stopping cold turkey. We've defined what deprescribing truly is. We've looked at who might be a good candidate, and we've set realistic expectations by looking at the actual data. This is heavy stuff, but it's the essential knowledge you need to move forward safely. If you're finding this guide helpful and are feeling more empowered with this information, I would be so grateful if you took just 1 second to tap that like button below this video. It's a small thing for you, but it tells YouTube that this is valuable content, and it helps the video reach more people just like you who need to hear this message. Thank you so much for that. Now, let's get back to it and build the next piece of our plan. And this next piece is the absolute bedrock. It's the foundation upon which any hope of deprescribing is built. We're talking about the aggressive, sustained, and non-negotiable lifestyle modifications that are prerequisites for success. I want to be very clear here. These are not gentle suggestions. These are the work you must be willing to do, day in and day out, to earn the right to even attempt a reduction in medication. Many of us think we're living a healthy lifestyle, but the level required here is often a step above what we imagine. The Mayo Clinic and the American Heart Association have very clear guidelines on this. The first pillar is adopting the DASH diet. DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. This isn't a fad diet. It's a scientifically proven eating plan rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins, and low in red meat, sweets, and saturated fats. Think of it as flooding your body with the nutrients that naturally help relax your blood vessels, like potassium and magnesium. A typical day on a DASH plan might be oatmeal with berries for breakfast, a large salad with grilled chicken for lunch, and baked salmon with a side of broccoli and quinoa for dinner. The second and equally critical pillar is a dramatic reduction in sodium. The average American consumes over 3,400 milligrams of sodium a day. The DASH diet recommends aiming for no more than 1,500 milligrams. That is a massive change. It means you essentially have to stop eating processed and restaurant foods. A single can of soup, a frozen dinner, or a deli sandwich can contain your entire day's sodium allowance. It requires you to cook at home, read every single label, and learn to love the taste of food seasoned with herbs and spices instead of salt. My own father used to say he didn't use much salt because he never added it at the table. But his diet was full of canned chili, processed cheese, and cured meats. When he finally started reading labels, he was shocked. The hidden salt was the real culprit. This is where the real work lies. The third pillar is consistent, moderate exercise. The goal is at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity activity, like brisk walking, swimming, or cycling. That breaks down to 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Exercise helps your heart become more efficient, so it can pump blood with less force, lowering the pressure on your arteries. And finally, there's weight management. Losing even a small amount of weight, just 5 or 10 pounds, can have a significant impact on your blood pressure. The action step here is to be brutally honest with yourself. Are you truly living this lifestyle, or just a version of it? Keep a food and activity journal for 1 week. Track everything. The numbers don't lie. This journal will be your proof, both to yourself and to your doctor, that you have built the necessary foundation. The red flag is thinking you can out-exercise a bad diet, or that a weekend of healthy eating makes up for a week of high-sodium processed foods. It has to be consistent. It has to be your new normal. Once that rock-solid lifestyle foundation is in place, and you and your doctor agree that the time is right, you can move on to the next phase, the tapering plan itself. How is this actually done safely? This part is 100% under your doctor's direction, but understanding the process can help demystify it and reduce your anxiety. The core principle is start low and go slow. This is the absolute opposite of the cold turkey approach. According to guidance from experts at places like GoodRx and Johns Hopkins Medicine, a typical safe taper is an incredibly gradual process. Let's say you're on one medication. Your doctor won't just stop it. They might suggest cutting your dose in half. So if you're taking a 10 milligram pill, you'll go down to 5 milligrams. And you won't do this for a week. You will likely stay on that new, lower dose for several weeks, or even a couple of months. During this time, your job becomes critically important. You become the lead data gatherer for your own health. Your doctor will insist on frequent home blood pressure monitoring. This doesn't mean checking it once a week. It means checking it at least once or twice a day, at the same times each day, and keeping a meticulous log. You'll record the date, the time, your systolic number, your diastolic number, and your pulse. You might also be asked to jot down any symptoms you're feeling, dizziness, headaches, anything out of the ordinary. This log is your lifeline. It's the data your doctor will use to make the next decision. After a few months on the half dose, you'll have a follow-up appointment. You'll bring your log, and together, you'll analyze the data. Is your blood pressure still perfectly controlled on the lower dose? If yes, that's a massive victory. You may stay on this lower dose permanently, having successfully reduced your pill burden. Or, if the numbers look exceptionally good and your lifestyle efforts are still strong, your doctor might suggest the next step, perhaps trying to stop the medication completely while continuing to monitor your blood pressure like a hawk for several more months. If at any point during this process, at the half dose or after stopping, your numbers start to creep up out of the target range, the experiment is paused. You simply go back to the last dose that kept you safe and stable. There is no shame in this. This is the process working exactly as it should. It's a series of careful tests with built-in safety nets. My friend's cardiologist used a great analogy. He said, "We're just walking down a staircase in the dark. We're going to take one step down, and then we're going to stand there for a good long while and make sure the step is solid before we even think about taking the next one." The action step is to buy a reliable, validated home blood pressure monitor and learn to use it correctly before you even begin. And the red flag is any feeling of impatience. If you feel the urge to speed up the process, to cut your dose faster than your doctor recommended, that's a sign to call your physician and talk about your concerns, not to take matters into your own hands. We have now arrived at the final, and I believe most crucial, piece of this entire puzzle. We've built the knowledge. We understand the risks, the process, and the requirements. But all of this is useless if you can't effectively communicate with the most important person on your team, your doctor. For so many people, this is the biggest hurdle. We've talked about cautious Carl, our persona who is afraid of being dismissed or seen as non-compliant. That fear is real, and it's shared by millions. Studies on doctor-patient communication show a significant gap. While a vast majority of patients say they would be willing to try deprescribing if their doctor suggested it, many are afraid to bring it up themselves. So, how do you bridge that gap? You do it with a plan. You do it by framing the conversation in a way that makes you sound like a responsible partner, not a rebellious patient. I'm going to give you a mini script, a way to open the conversation that is collaborative and respectful. You don't walk in and say, "I want to stop my blood pressure pills." Instead, you might try something like this. You wait for the right moment in the appointment, and you say, "Doctor, I have a question about my long-term treatment plan. I feel really good, and I'm very grateful for how this medication has kept my blood pressure under control. I've also been working really hard on my lifestyle. I've lost 15 pounds, and I'm walking every day. And I'm wondering if we could talk about my overall goals. My quality of life is really important to me, and I'm curious if, in your opinion, there might ever be a safe way to see if I could be managed on a lower dose, or what your thoughts are on the concept of deprescribing for a patient like me. Do you see the difference? You started with gratitude. You've demonstrated your commitment and hard work. You've used collaborative language like we and our goals. You've asked for their opinion, showing respect for their expertise. And you've used the correct clinical term, which signals that you've done your homework. This approach completely changes the dynamic. To support this, you should also have a list of specific questions ready to ask. For example, based on my personal health history, what are the biggest risks for me if we were to try this? Or, what blood pressure numbers would you want me to maintain at home during a tapering process? And how would we know if the trial was a success or if we needed to go back to the original dose? Having these questions written down shows you are thoughtful and serious. I know a woman who was terrified to have this talk. She wrote her opening line on an index card and just read it to her doctor. Her doctor smiled and said, "That is an excellent question. I'm so glad you brought this up. Let's look at your chart together." That one sentence opened a door she thought was locked forever. The action step is to literally write down your opening line and your questions before your next appointment. Practice saying them out loud. The red flag is your own silence. If you leave that appointment with your questions unasked because you are too nervous, that is a missed opportunity. Your health is worth a few moments of courage. And a quick but important reminder, I am not a doctor, and this video is not medical advice. It is for informational and educational purposes only. The goal here is to empower you to have a more informed, collaborative conversation with your own qualified healthcare provider who knows your unique medical history. Please, never make any changes to your medication or your health routine without first consulting them. So let's bring it all home. We've been on quite a journey today. We started by confronting the very real danger of rebound hypertension, establishing that safety must be our guiding star. From there, we demystified the term deprescribing, reframing it not as a risky detox, but as a sophisticated medical strategy to optimize your health and quality of life in partnership with your doctor. We walked through the checklist to see if you might be a good candidate, and then we grounded ourselves in the real-world data, understanding that success is possible for some, but not guaranteed for all. And that's okay. We then laid down the non-negotiable bedrock of success, the deep and sustained lifestyle changes that are the price of admission for even trying. We pulled back the curtain on what a slow, safe, data-driven tapering process actually looks like, and finally, we equipped you with the very words you can use to start this life-changing conversation with your doctor. My hope is that you no longer see this as a hopeless situation. You are not simply a passive recipient of a pill. You have the power to be an active, engaged, and knowledgeable partner in your own care. The knowledge you've gained today is a form of power. It's the power to ask better questions, the power to understand the process, and the power to approach your health, not with fear, but with a confident, proactive strategy. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which part of our conversation today was the biggest aha moment for you? Was it learning about rebound hypertension? Understanding the true definition of deprescribing? Or was it the mini-script for talking to your doctor? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Reading your experiences and insights helps our entire community learn and grow together. And if you enjoyed this deep dive and found value in our time together, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that little notification bell. We create in-depth, research-backed health content just like this every single week, and we'd love to have you as part of our community. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Be well, stay empowered, and I'll see you in the next video.